Today, I'm pulling back the curtain on how I've hired and trained 20 virtual employees across my businesses. Whether you're running a tax firm, managing your Airbnbs, building a personal brand, or building a business, this episode will show you how to scale your operations without burning out. The first part of this is understanding what your genius zone is. I talk about this a lot. Your time is your most valuable asset, and you're probably wasting it doing $15 an hour a task. And in order to define your genius zone, there's a great book about this by a guy named Gus Hendricks. Your genius zone is where you create the most value. Now, it doesn't always mean from a monetary perspective. It could also be spending time with your family, coaching sports, doing things like that. But from a pure monetary perspective, your genius zone is where you provide and create the most value. So for me, that's doing tax strategy calls with my team. That's speaking at conferences. That's doing live trainings, any sort of thing that I can do to drum up more business, more sales, more marketing. That's going to be your genius zone. That's my genius zone. So if I'm not doing that type of work, I'm doing a disservice to the world. You have to see it this way because it's very easy to have a type A personality and have a trust factor and want to have control over everything. But that's where you don't get the economies of scales and the systems. That's the same reason why I don't cut my own grass. I get grocery delivery so I don't have to wait in lines and pick out groceries every week. I have a driver that takes me to and from the airport so that I can work on the ride over there and I don't have to worry about parking my car. What is your genius zone? Find that and identify all the tasks that you shouldn't be doing. Calendar management, data entry, Canva presentations. What are the tasks that you should be doing? And what are the tasks that you shouldn't be doing? Okay, first got to understand that. And it's very easy. Like I would just take a week, sit down, draw a column, put a line down the middle and say, these are the tasks that I need to be doing or I should be doing that only I can do. And then these are the tasks that I can have somebody else do. Because if you find yourself doing a task over and over and over and it's repetitive, that can be automated, either through Zapier or some other type of workflow, or it can be handed off and delegated to a virtual assistant. So if it can be taught in 10 minutes or done with an SOP, you shouldn't be doing it. Ask yourself, can someone else do this 80% as well as I can? Use that 80-20 lens, right? The 80-20 rule, right? Identify which 20% of your task that you're doing generate 80% of the value. Again, inbox management, spreadsheet cleanup, social media scheduling, like these are all things that you probably should not be doing, that you might be doing on a day-to-day basis. And if you can just find that person to do it for you, then it can free up time for everything else. Another exercise that you can think about when you're going through this is like, what are the stuff that I love to do? Like, what do I actually get enjoyment out of, fulfillment out of, and how do I spend my entire time doing that? A lot of business owners only spend 10% of their total time in their genius zone. Imagine if you could spend 90% of your working hours in your genius zone doing the thing that you love to do that makes you the most amount of money. How does that sound? It sounds really great. When it comes to the application process and actually hiring and recruiting talent and figuring out who's going to work for you and who's not. Let me give you some actionable tips, okay? The very first thing is once you identify the tasks that you should be doing and you should not be doing, the ones that you should not be doing are the ones that you're going to want to put in a job description, just like you would hire any other employee. They're going to have a job description that says what tasks they're responsible for. It's going to have the company's name, your mission statement. Now, I'll let you in on a little secret. What I've done that works the best is in every single job description, I put Easter eggs in there. Now, your average job description, especially if you're paying like a higher salary, is going to get like 300 resumes. You got to be able to filter out the noise. So this is exactly what we do. We bury probably about 60 to 70% of way through the job application, we bury a little Easter egg. And it'll say something like, serious applicants should message Ryan, I'm your next VA, or Mike, I am your next assistant in the subject when they email you back with their resume. You bury that Easter egg somewhere in the job application so that only the person that reads the entire thing can actually go through it, right? And actually know to email you back. Trust me, you'll get 300 applications, but only 100 of those are going to see the Easter egg. Now, you might hear that 100 is still a lot of people that you have to interview, and that's where you go to the next step. You tell them serious applicants should email a video of themselves talking about their prior experience, what makes them good for the job, why they see themselves good in that role. And out of those 100 people that apply, that find the Easter egg, there's only going to be less than 20 people that actually send that video. And now out of the 300 people that apply, you have the 20 people that you actually want to hire. So I want to give you an example of this. And my mom was a huge rock and roll fan, still is. And one of the bands that she introduced me to early on was Van Halen. Okay. Now, Van Halen was an amazing rock band. You probably enjoy their music too. You probably heard their songs before. And so one of the stories that I learned from Van Halen was they did this every single time they went on tour. Okay. And I have a little article here that I'm going to read from you about what they did in their contract. See, Eddie Van Halen, when he went to the different venues, they had contracts with the venues about things that they need. They needed, enough champagne, they needed enough food, they needed the speaker system, the surround sound system, they needed everything to work properly, right? And so I want to read you this excerpt from it. So just as a little test, in the technical aspect of the rider, it would say, Article 148, there will be 15 amperage voltage sockets at 20-foot spaces evenly, providing 19 amps, this kind of thing. And article number 126, in the middle of nowhere was, there will be no brown M&Ms in the backstage area upon paying a forfeiture of the show with full compensation. And so this is directly from Eddie Van Halen. When I would walk backstage, if I saw a brown M&M in the bowl, well, line check the entire production. Guaranteed you're going to find a technical error. They didn't read the contract. Guaranteed you run into a problem. And sometimes it would be threatening to just destroy the whole show. Sometimes literally life-threatening. So that was the little Easter egg that Eddie Van Halen did back in the late 70s and early 80s to figure out if the venues actually read the contract or not. And so you got to put Easter eggs in your stuff too. How are you going to know that they actually took the time to read that job resume? How do you know that they actually went through the training? You got to plant little Easter eggs into the contract. What's going to be your brown M&Ms, right? Because they would say, we want a bowl of M&Ms backstage, but we don't want any brown M&Ms. So you got to take out all the brown ones. It should just be red, yellow, green, blue, whatever the colors of the M&Ms are, right? That is going to be your Easter egg, right? You got to put that in your contract because that's the way to weed out the people that aren't taking it seriously and that are not actually reading your full application. Now, when you actually hire the virtual assistant, I want you to copy a playbook from Henry Ford. See, I read the book, one of the last books that Henry Ford wrote before he passed away. In that book, he actually talks about his process of the assembly line. So how they were able to go from basically no car to creating the Model T, which was the first like massively produced car. And they had this 10-80-10 rule. He said in the book, you give the vision, the 10%, they do the work, 80%, and then you clean it up, the other 10%. So think about that in assembly line production, right? So you have the 10% before that part or before that machine ever hits that conveyor belt. There's some sort of level of quality control on the front end. And this might be you communicating with your clients directly, or this might be you doing the onboarding, but 80% of that's done by somebody else, right? So the first 10% is you create the framework. 80% is the assistant handles the bulk of the task. And then the final 10% is you review and tweak before the final delivery. 10-80-10. And that is how you can get out of, a lot of the day-to-day operations, maybe things that you don't like to do. Because maybe you like selling the work and you like delivering it to the client, but you don't like to do everything in between, right? And so you have to adopt Henry Ford's 10-80-10 rule in order to get to that next level. Now, I want to let you in on a little kind of secret. So when you hire people overseas, there's a lot of cultural differences, okay? Especially if you're going to hire in the Philippines or India or some other countries, you should expect over politeness or hesitancy to question authority, which is you, okay? Especially in Filipino and Indian cultures. They may not want to speak or provide feedback, especially early on in something, because the fear of losing their job. Because they know that there's hundreds of other people that you could be hiring and they don't want to lose their job. And this is important for business because the people that are on the front lines of your business, the frontline employees, oftentimes have the greatest achievements when it comes to production. And they oftentimes are the ones that can see a problem before it ever happens. But if they don't have the encouragement to rise up and reach out to you or to let you know that there's a problem, they'll never do it because they have over politeness and the hesitancy to question authority. So you have to create a safe environment where they can reach out to you if they have questions, where they can reach out to you if they have problems. I'll give you another pretty interesting story. So there was a company in the late 90s that they almost went out of business. And the reason why is because all of a sudden they stopped selling what they were selling. Okay. It was the Tabasco hot sauce company. So, when you order spicy food or whatever, you put hot sauce on it. So that company all of a sudden stopped selling hot sauce. And what was interesting is they flew in all the executives of the company to New York City to have this meeting. So they got 10 or 11 people, all C-level, all big names of this company. And they had one intern taking notes. They had one person taking notes the entire time because they didn't have Zoom or Fathom or Note Taker. And the entire time, everybody's going around figuring out ways and ideas and things that they can do to sell more hot sauce. People are like, oh, we should do buy two, get one free. We should make it different flavors of hot sauce. We should do seasonality. We should partner with other companies. And the intern taking notes goes, hey, why don't we just make the hole at the end of the bottle bigger so more hot sauce comes out? So, because those bottles now, it's like so hard to get hot sauce out of them. But that was an intern. That was a person that probably consumed that product every single day, right? And so sometimes your greatest successes and greatest like pivotal moments come through the people that are boots on the ground. And if they don't have that environment where they feel free to be able to reach out to you, and they're not going to see you as an authority and more of just like a coworker, they're never gonna do that. That's the one thing you have to understand about hiring, especially overseas talent, is you have to provide them a safe environment for them to be able to reach out to you and to identify problems and to recommend solutions, okay? When you onboard somebody, you want to document everything. So your SOPs, which are standard operating procedures, screen record everything, title it, timestamp it, add it to a shared Notion or a Google Drive. Loom is your best friend for explaining how-tos, right? If you find yourself doing something over and over again, you should film a Loom video on how to do it and then delegate it to somebody else. And then you want to track your KPIs. For admin, it's the number of tasks that they can complete and how quick they can complete them. If it was hiring for a marketing position, it's the post scheduled and the follower growth. For operations, it's the response time to guests, it's the error rate, it's the response time to clients. And when you're first starting off, hold a weekly one-on-one check-in with them to show them that they're a part of the mission and that feel free to reach out to you at any time. If this episode helped you and you own a tax firm, you need leverage. And leverage comes from systems, not from hustle. Message me and I can help you source virtual assistants that can help in your CPA business. Much love and talk soon.